Thank you, Kuppaswamy, for allowing us to be here today. Something that we always tell people when we travel in the West is that India is not the only place in the world where there were Siddhas. There have been Siddhas in every culture. There were Egyptian Siddhas, there were Chinese Taoist Siddhas, the Mayans, the Native Americans, Christian Siddhas, Jewish Siddhas in the Kabbalah, Sufi Siddhas. But we always emphasize that the reason why we focus on India is that the tradition, spiritual tradition of India has remained unbroken for thousands of years. If we take a look at Egypt, we see that they burned the library at Alexandria, and probably 99% of the wisdom in that temple was lost. Or what happened in China when Mao Zedong came to power and tried to stamp out the spiritual tradition of the largest population on the planet, China. He tried to annihilate Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, and came close to succeeding. Thank God he did not. And then if we look at America, we see the Native American tradition was also disrupted by the Europeans coming to America. However, India has preserved for thousands of years in an unbroken tradition the spiritual knowledge of India. And that's why we focus on India so much, because we can learn from the Siddha tradition about these beings who perfected their consciousness. I'd love it if you could speak more about this eternal, living Siddha tradition and what we as citizens of the world can learn from it.
That is a good question, sir. See, in Tamil Nadu, the Siddha tradition is an unbroken one. It is like flowing oil for some 5,000 years. They somehow outmaneuvered the natural calamities and other things with which human civilization could be sabotaged and destroyed. They lost thousands of books in the continent of Lemuria. So they devised a system of immortal knowledge, and they embedded it in the very alphabet of the knowledge, of the language, Tamil. See, the very language, how it is made up of, there are 12 vowels, 18 consonants, and in between you have got one letter. It is called Aida letter or Ak. That is the 13th letter. And they, the Siddhas say, if you know this 13th letter, that is where your spirit resides. For example, this 13th letter is called Ak. How is it composed of? It contains the very first vowel A, in English A, and the very first consonant Ik. When you add A with Ik, and you get Ak. When you say this, pronounce this letter Ak, and if you watch from which place in the skull this letter, this sound is produced, and that place is the exact location where your soul resides. That is your temple of God Himself. As I told you earlier, in the New Testament you find the kingdom of God is within you, but the exact location is given by the Siddhas. You pronounce the word Ak and see from where this sound is produced, what is the origin of this sound, and that place in your skull at the center of your crown is the place where your soul or spirit is placed by God Himself. That is the real temple, and in that temple resides God. And that God could be called Nataraja or Aruperinjodi or by any other name. That is the real place of your oversoul, as Emerson called it. So, in the very alphabet of the language contains the entire system of the Siddhas. So, even if all the books are buried or all the books are destroyed, even if one person exists upon the earth who could speak this knowledge, out of that knowledge you can collect and draw out all the wisdom of the Siddhas. Vowels are called in Tamil Uyir Eluthu. Uyir means life spirit. And consonants are called Mei Eluthu. Eluthu means letter, Mei means body. Uyir and Mei, soul and spirit, join together to make a human body. So, when these two are conjoined in a place, that place is called Ak or Ayudha Eluthu or the 13th place, where your body and mind is placed together. And that place was called the pineal gland in the Old Testament. If you go through the Old Testament, you will find that place is called the pineal. The pineal is the place where Jacob saw God himself. It is there in the chapter on Jacob's ladder in the Old Testament. And if you read the history of the Tamil Nadu, you will find that there was trade between the Tamilians and the Romans and Jews. About some 2 to 3,000 years ago. So there could have been some connection between these two cultures, and who borrowed from whom, I don't know. And the Siddhas were people who roamed around all over the world, and in every language they founded their system of alchemy and esoteric texts. They were not bothered about organized religion or ritualistic measures. They were interested only in pure knowledge of spirit, how to know spirit and how to know God. These were the only two real things in which they were interested. So, the Jews might have borrowed it from the Tamil Siddhas, or the Tamil Siddhas could have borrowed from them. We are not bothered about that. We don't want to enter into that politics. And again, once again, you see, this is the place where your soul is united with the body, according to Descartes. In the 16th, 7th century, the Frenchman, the father of modern philosophy, Descartes, the great mathematician, came out with one statement, and he says, pineal gland is the only place where you can find your soul and where you can find your God. Later this was rejected by the scientists, but the Siddhas claim, yes, the pineal gland is the place in which you find an empty space, and in that empty space you find the soul, inside which you find the oversoul. This is purely Siddha teaching. I don't know how, from where Descartes got it. But it's a long tradition. Somehow he had intuited that fact, or he had learned it from a Siddha. I don't know. But that is the truth. Pineal gland is the place where the body is joined together with the soul. Pineal gland is the place where your soul is joined with God, and your body and soul are also conjoined together. And not only that, pineal gland is the place where this human body is joined together with the entire cosmos. So if you know that place and there is a door, if you could enter into that door, you can have connection with the entire cosmos. You can have connection with the infinite dimensions of creation. That was what the Siddhas said. And one more thing. I told you that they were evolutionists. Man has got the 6th degree of knowledge called mind or reflective consciousness. That is why all the New Age gurus say man alone is conscious of his own consciousness. I am quoting Teilhard de Chardin, the French thinker, French Christian thinker, preacher, as well as scientist, paleontologist, in his book, classic book, The Phenomenon of Man. The very gist of that book is that man alone is conscious of his own consciousness. If man has to develop into another species in future, it is only possible through his own self-consciousness. And all the New Age gurus like Gurdjieff, P.D. Uspensky and J. Krishnamurti and Osho and other people like your own Ken Wilber, they all come out with the statement that man's future development is possible only through his self-consciousness or reflective consciousness. Yes, that is accepted by the Siddhas. From the sixth, they want you to enter into the seventh degree of consciousness. They call it as intuitive faculty, intuition. And the eighth degree of consciousness, they call it as insight. And beyond that, they say there is the ninth degree of consciousness, that is, one should consciously enter into one's own soul. One's own soul is the temple, and the doors are closed, but you should consciously enter into that. That is, your consciousness must be so sharpened that it is in fact sharper than your own Atman. Then you can enter into your own soul, that is the ninth degree of consciousness. And once you have that faculty, you can enter into your own soul and you can see the Lord dancing in the form of light inside your own soul, in the form of oversoul. Then what happens? Once you have the darshan of the Lord, once you see the Lord, Aritperum Jyoti, you yourself attain the absolute consciousness of God. Sri Aurobindo called it with a different name. He calls it mind of light. Mind of light. And the great Siddha Tiruvallur called it Valarivu. Val means light. Mind of light. Supramental consciousness, it was called by Sri Aurobindo. So total knowledge, absolute knowledge is possible for man only at the 10th degree of knowledge. All these things were mentioned in the Siddha texts.